Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Pranita. Okay. Good morning. We'll be starting with this webinar, and majorly it will be discussions on whiteboard. Okay. If required, I'll just try to open Visual Studio and maybe showcase a few of the demonstrations if absolutely required. Okay. If some topic is not clear, you can just mention that, and then we'll try to cover certain pinpoints which are very important from the perspective of .NET interview for freshers. So I'm going to share whiteboard. Okay, so let me know once you see the whiteboard. I guess four people can see the whiteboard. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll start now. So now to start with, we have this whiteboard is shared, so let's not draw anything. At least it's a uh, uh, other participants can contribute, but then let's not plan to make the changes. Okay, here we are, guys. So normally, if at all you are a fresher and you are going to go and appear specifically for .NET based interview, few of the things which are going to go and happen first, like I'm sure that by this time, let's say you are done with the basic aptitude test, maybe English, and after the basic hurdles are over, then let's say you sit in front of interviewers specifically for the technical interview. And then in the technical interview, what is it that happens is the first part which comes up in front of you is going to be something like, what is it that your project was all about? Okay. Majority of the time, it is expected that whatever your academic project, if any, or if you are from a background like in an institute, if you are done some sort of SIDAC courses, SIDAC-like courses, and if at all you have something like maybe .NET project, maybe or .NET based project done, then you will notice that what was the role of MS.NET, yeah, in your project. That is where it's going to go and start with. So one of the first thing is you may have something like uh, you'll be asked about your project description. Something like tell us about your project description. For example, I'll just have one of the example picked up. So if at all we have people like I can understand that some of you are from SIDAC background. So if at all we can just come up with just an example. So we have a participant KD4 Sushant. Sushant, if you are there, we can just have a demo itself out here. Sushant, if you are there, or Sharvari, if you are there, or anyone for that matter, who would like to participate as an example. I just wanted to understand, and somebody can just explain the project. Sharvari, if at all I'm audible, and if at all you can just say hi. Anyone whose audio is working, should not be one-way communication. Anyone?
Hello, sir.
Hi, yes.
Yes.
So Saurabh,
Yes, sir.
yes. Okay. So Saurabh, what is the role of, let's say, did you do any kind of a project in .NET or any kind of a role that .NET is playing in your project?
I currently work on project on .NET.
You currently work on project on .NET. Okay.
Yes.
So when it comes to something like, let's say, a project, whatever application that you are working on as of now, if you can just, maybe convey in brief, maybe let's say, maybe next, maybe 5 lines. If you can just explain about your project.
I am currently working on feedback management system.
Okay.
Uh, in this project, I implement React.js for front-end development
Okay.
and .NET Core MVC for back-end development
O-
and Microsoft SQL Server as a database management system.
Okay. That's great. So, guys, what happens is, when the basic explanation of a project, thank you, Saurabh. So when basic explanation of the project is over, then what is it that we come up with is, Saurabh has already mentioned that what was the role in case of role of MS.NET in the project. So he has clearly mentioned that, he has used in the project specifically as a backend technology. Most probably the APIs are constructed with the help of Microsoft.NET, and the backend database is also conveyed that SQL Server is being used. So this just gives a 10,000 feet overview of, you can say, a problem statement that you dealt with. Okay. After which, normally what happens is, majority of the time, what people do is they do use something like MS.NET as a backend. And when it comes to as a backend technology, most of the people end up creating web APIs. But then that does not sum up the entire .NET. So most of the time, the requirements that people have, specifically MS.NET based companies, are not always on the web APIs. They're also going to be there on something which is like maybe core MVC, the server side rendering part. So those things are not there in every project, and that's exactly where what we are supposed to do is we have to dig in more and convey more about the project. So this only sums up that Saurabh has idea about Web API and SQL Server, at least based on the project a problem statement. Then, here is what happens. After the project is conveyed and a person has a knowledge that, okay, you did use .NET to some extent, then the next step comes up. Okay. That something like, since it's a Web API that Saurabh has used, if at all you have a project where you have not used .NET, but you know .NET, okay, and you are appearing for interview of a .NET or interview on .NET. In such cases, what would happen is you can always convey whatever are the facts that, okay, you did use Java, you did use Node, you did use maybe MERN stack. You can afferently convey whatever are the facts. Okay. And then later on, you can just convey you are also good at .NET and hence you are appearing for this interview. Or you did prepare, you have a certificate in .NET and that's the reason you are appearing for .NET because technology rarely matters in this case. So when it comes to that, if you have done with the project, you already have conveyed the project. If you are not done with the project, then you at least have conveyed your willingness to appear for the interview in case of .NET. And then the things basically start. So here we start. So take an example now. Something like, forget about the basic theoretical questions that people might come up with. That's too rare. Nobody is going to go and ask you a long form of CTS and CLS and CLR and what GC stands for and so and so. People are not going to go and offer you a job based on top of long forms. Okay. So the actual, topics that basically you should be focused upon are, one of the topic that we have is something like delegates, events, that you should focus on while you prepare. Then there is something which is called as link queue. Okay, I'm just going to go and hit enter and type in here. Okay. Then there is entity framework that you should be focusing on. Then there is something which is called as basic things. OOP wise, not too much of OOP, but the basic OOP concept should be clear. And these are very, very routine questions, no matter whether you are appearing for Java, .NET, or maybe other any OOP-based technology. These things are very common. Something like, people who would end up asking you interfaces, okay, abstract classes, and then anyway, the delegate part can come up in picture. The next thing now, which has started is something like in the discussion, people do ask something which is called as dependency injection a lot. Okay, dependency injection. Because MVC core or MVC in general is based on top of this concept only. That is dependency injection majorly. Okay. Only few of the companies will end up asking you the entire life cycle of MVC core. Okay. But dependency injection is unavoidable. It is something that you should be having like knowledge about. Then the next thing comes up is specifically from the MVC core part. Okay. People would end up asking you something which is called as filters. Okay. There would be filters. And there would be something which is called as CORS issues or APIs. APIs and CORS is something that people can come up with. Okay. And very, very, very rare, if at all, the company is basically paying you a lot in terms of packages, then people may actually come up with the questions upon something which is called as performance improvement. So I would just end up adding here performance improvement in terms of memory and something which is called as CPU. Okay. So from the perspective of memory and CPU, normally what is expected is your inputs are expected. So we are going to go and discuss around these topics only today because these are the topics which basically one should focus upon at least when appearing for .NET interviews. Okay. These are the only major topics that one should deal with. The rest of the topics you can just, maybe what you can say, you can just skip or you can just be just brush up and you can appear for the interviews. But these are the major topics that one should be focusing upon. Okay. I'm just going to go and save this. I'll be sharing these things with you over the group. I'll export this. Here we go. Now the next discussion is going to be upon something like delegates, events, interfaces, abstract classes, and blah blah. Those points that we have to understand now. So let's focus. So when it comes to OP concepts, one of the easiest question that we can come up with is, let me see if at all I can just copy paste this and put it in the notepad. Okay. And let me clear the page. Okay. So we'll be starting with something like questions on, okay, maybe the difference. A very, what you call as basic question. What is the difference between, yeah, okay, explain something like interfaces and abstract classes. Okay. Difference and similarities. That is where people are going to want focus on. Let's say we have started with the interview and somebody asks you explain interfaces and abstract classes, difference and similarities. Okay. So now if at all somebody want to contribute, you can just start speaking. If at all somebody want to just maybe treat this as if it's an interview and then maybe let me correct, or if at all you don't speak, then what I'll do is I'll anyway explain. Anybody want to just contribute in here? Imagine this is an interview, and then somebody has asked you explain interfaces in abstract classes, differences and similarities. Anyone? Yes, Sumant. Your voice is not audible. Sumant, you are not audible. You have unmuted, but I guess you are not audible. No. If anybody can hear Sumant, okay, there is some problem with the device maybe. If anybody else wants to contribute, guys.
Hello, sir.
Okay, Saurabh, yes, good.
Interface is a specification where only one abstract method is present, and there is no means there is a method declaration, no method implementation. And in abstract method, there are abstract method and concrete methods. Means there are some abstract methods and some concrete methods.
Okay, so when it comes to interfaces, thank you again, Saurabh. Sumant has conveyed both are used for achieving abstraction. Okay, that's correct. So when it comes to interface and abstract classes, the basic differences when it comes to the base, the core base or .NET base. Normally interfaces, okay, are specifically for multiple implementations. Okay, and then although we convey that it is for multiple implementations, or typically both can be inherited in general. But then, there is no clear word which separates interface implementation and abstract class, maybe inheritance. But then when it comes to something like interfaces, we have a few facts which can be discussed and demonstrated. So one of the things that we have with respect to interfaces is interfaces can, or multiple interfaces can be implemented. So interfaces in multiples can be implemented by any class. Okay. Here, then the other difference can be, wherein the only one class or one abstract class can be inherited at a time, okay, in a multi-level inheritance. So since .NET allows multiple or multi-level inheritance, only abstract classes or one abstract class can be implemented at any given point. The next thing which comes up is, okay, there will be counter questioning for sure. Okay, there will be counter questioning. Something like, okay, multi-level inheritance is there. And then, we have one maybe a class which basically is getting implemented at any given point. Interface in multiples can be implemented by any class. That is what is conveyed. Then the question comes up, does interface really have something which is called as, let's say, the method implementations. Okay. So routine .NET interfaces did not have what you called as maybe methods with body or default implementations. Okay, within itself. So routine interfaces, we never had something which is called as methods implementations, or something like, only declarations is something that we had. Only declarations was allowed. Okay. However, okay, however, recently we have a default implementation as well available. Also available. Now, this is something which is, Java and .NET, both worlds basically go and move in parallel. So .NET also comes up with a default implementation in the interfaces. Okay. But then when it comes to something which is called as, maybe defining something which is called as the specifiers or so, the difficult default implementation, okay, default implementation is public of interfaces is public. Okay. If the methods not conveyed, rather, I should not even say this because the default implementation is interface implementation is public. Now, when it comes to something which is called as abstract classes, okay, in abstract classes, okay, one can come up with, okay, partially complete and incomplete methods. Okay, which means some with a definition for the purpose of pure inheritance, and some with only declarations, along with what you can say, along with something which is called as specifiers. So abstract class methods will come up with the specifiers, and then they can come up with the implementations or they can come up with the declarations as well. Okay, these are the a few points one can come up with. In case of similarities, when it comes to, okay, in both cases, similarities, if we come up to, so in both cases or both interfaces and abstract classes used for abstraction, I should say, while both interface and abstract classes used for abstraction, it also can be used for something which is called as dependency injection. Okay. Now, this is the point where you are going to go and lead the what you call interviewer to a different area altogether. Keep it in mind that normally those who are appearing for interviews at the moment, you are the one who is going to go and lead that interview. Okay, if you are appearing for an interview, you are the one who is going to go and ruin, and you are the one who is going to go and lead the interview. Normally, interviewer, does not have a bouquet of questions like in the platter ready. So there can be random questions which can come up, and normally your, previous answer is going to go and take you or lead you to a newer what you call it as question. So normally a question like abstract classes interfaces, both are allowed specifically, we can use it typically for, in general inheritance as a word. But then interfaces so far, at least in .NET, those who have seen, majority of the time people use it specifically for implementations. Like, we declare the method and we implement it. But when it comes to something which is called as uh, uh, default implementations, that is not the concept which basically .NET had earlier. This is the recent concept which is newly added, and then this concept is there in Java, I guess, since JDK 7 or something. That is something that you will have to find out. But then Java and .NET world move parallelly in the market. So you will find out now there is a default implementation, but you will still find out both interfaces, at a core, we declare the methods and we implement the methods. When it comes to method implementations, we have options available that we can actually go for something which is called as a private implementations of interfaces as well, which means unless and until we really have something which is called as interface reference, we won't be able to call those methods at any point of time. Okay. So if I just have to, maybe explain it to you, let me take you to the code now. Okay. I'm just going to go and share PNG file here. Okay. And let me share the whiteboard with, or rather, share the screen with you all. I'm just taking you to the screen now. Let me know once you see the screen. Can you see the screen? Yeah. If you can see the screen. Okay. Great. Let me jump to Visual Studio. Here we go. And it was webinar folder only. Okay. I'll just open a new solution will pick up. Give me a minute. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to add a console application. This is going to be core application. Going to be .NET 8.0. Okay, here we go. So take an example. I'm just going to go and have a very, very simple example. In here itself, I'm going to go and add. Let's say there's an interface that I'm going to go and add. Interface called as IX. Okay, a simple public interface that I would have. I'll have a couple of methods added out here. Let us say there's a method added which is called as an integer returning add method. Okay, expectation is int x comma int y. Okay, there's going to be another method that I would like to add. Let's say subtract method. It's a very simple demonstration. So a subtract method, just to showcase you how we can utilize this. There's a interface called as ix2, or I can just copy paste this interface itself. And deliberately what I'm going to go and do now, I'm going to go and add in here add and multiplication. Now take an example. There is an add and multiplication. So this particular method is duplicate now over here. Okay. And there is a interface which basically come up with something which is called as class maths, which must go ahead and implement something which is called as ix and iy both. Okay. So see now what happens when a class math is created and we are coming from ix and iy both. Okay. What you will notice is if I just implement this, we have two options available while we implement it. One is implement the interface, and then there is implement all members explicitly. Okay. Which is eventually called as private implementation. So what is it that's going to happen if I just go for implementing the interface IX? See, there are two methods now, add and subtract. Keep it in mind, add is also available in case of IX and IY both. Okay, I'm just going to go and add in here something like return x plus y. Okay, I'm going to go and add in over here return x minus y. And now I'm going to go and implement IY as well. Keep it in mind, IY also has an add. I just go ahead, okay, and implement the interface. See what you see now? You can see add, you can see mult, you can see subtract. You don't see add one more time. Otherwise, there will be, we would end up in ambiguity if at all you see that. So we have here something which is called as x into y. So add is twice going to be coming from ix and iy. Multiplication is from iy. Subtract is specifically from ix. And now take an example. Those who would like to utilize can create maths class object. Okay, maths equal to new maths. And we can just keep on calling maths dot. Look at this, the methods available. Add is there, subtract is there, and multiplication is there. So if at all I wish to call add with 1020 as in parameter, I would end up getting the result, which is going to be, let's say, this is the result. And I'm just going to go and say console.readline at the end. Just observe. See, I created maths class object. So if I run this piece of code, what you will end up getting is 30 as a result. Let me run and show you the output quickly. Here comes 30 as an output. Now look at this. Here, I have this addition code. I have the subtraction related code. And I can very well keep on calling something which is called as multiplication related code as well. Okay, with the same class object. So maths class is there, reference of maths class, and I have addition, subtraction, multiplication, basically all things called. But take an example, what would have happened if I would have, okay, taken over here something like IX reference. And now if at all I see this maths dot, I can only see add and subtract because IX reference allows me to only peep into maths class object and look at only IX implementations. So I will be able to call add and subtract, but look at the zigzag line. It clearly mentions I cannot see multiplication as in function because reference is of IX. So I only have a visibility of something which is called as add and subtract. I do not have visibility of multiplication. So I'm supposed to simply remove this. And then if at all, see with the IX reference, I can only call add and subtract. I don't have a visibility to multiplication. And then the next thing comes up is what if I have the next implementation like this. What if I come up with IY, okay, out here, okay? I will only be able to see now, if I just put here maths dot, look at this, I will only be able to see multiplication and add in this case. I will not be able to see the subtract method. And then if I run this piece of code, I will only be able to get the subtract code and then sorry, addition and multiplication. I won't be able to find out subtract. Then the next thing comes up is why would somebody go and create a reference of IX when we have a complete visibility to maths class? And that's exactly where the interface implementation makes some sense. Nobody would see you yourself have complete maths class available. Why wouldn't you create a reference of maths class and create an object of maths? Why will you end up getting a reference of Ix an object of maths, a reference of Iy an object of maths? Why will you do this by yourself? So nobody would like to do this. Then comes up a theory out here. And something like, just imagine the left-hand side belongs to one client side and right-hand side imagine belongs to server side. Just imagine what you are given to client is you have given client something which is called as only interface. Just imagine this interface is compiled into one DLL. Just imagine this interface is compiled into another DLL. And just imagine this class is compiled into another third DLL. Okay. And just imagine this maths class basically resides somewhere on the server side. And then what you keep on distributing to your end customers is you are distributing IX and IY like interfaces. So somebody who is going to want to pay me for add and subtract, I will give that person interface IX. Somebody who is going to want to pay me for IY, I will give IY as an interface, that DLL. And keep it in mind, you are not distributing source code. You are basically distributing just an interface. There is no harm in distributing interfaces. So somebody who basically has an interface DLL cannot do anything with your logic because your logic sits on the server side. Just imagine. And then one person given IX and given IY can only create a reference of interface IX and reference of IY, which means person given with IX and IY only can do the left hand side creation like this. They cannot create right hand side equal to, I mean, after the equal to, whatever code that we have written, new maths. A person cannot create new maths. The reason is a person does not have reference to maths class. And imagine a scene, here lies a code, okay, instead of new maths, just imagine, okay, here is a code, okay, here is a code which will get object of maths from server side using maybe HTTP or TCP. Just imagine. So server side has something which is called as a class available called as maths class. So some server side will be contacted. Okay, there are ways available. There is a way called as web service, WCF. There's a way available called as remoting. Okay, in Java, if at all you have heard of, there is a way available which is eventually called as EJB. There's a way available called as remote method invocation. Java also has got these options available. Just imagine somebody just has access to interface, creates a reference. After equal to, somebody is going to go and create an object on server side and throw the object back to the client side. So where I put a comment, imagine the object is going to go and come down from somewhere. You have no idea on the left hand side that the object coming is of type class maths. But whatever object which comes up to your way, interface is going to go and capture it because that object is internally implementing something which is called as IX or IY. So those who basically has a reference of IX will be able to see only IX related portion out here. So those who basically have IX will only be able to see these methods. Those who have IY will be able to see only those methods. A very simplest example, if at all you have to see, based on a subscription, you will be able to see the channels, right? If at all you have a cable, if at all you have a dish TV, for example, or if at all you have yeah, dish TV is a good example. If at all you have a dish TV with you, just imagine a scene, something like, you will, whichever channels you subscribe, only those channels you are going to go and see. Those who you haven't subscribed, you will not be able to see. That doesn't mean people are not broadcasting all the channel, streaming. There's a streaming happening for all the channels. Only what you subscribe, you are going to want to grab. Just like that, if I have a reference of IX available with me, I will be able to see IX related methods. If I have IY reference available with me, I will only be able to see the, add and multiplication method. I do not have add and subtract method implementations with me. I don't have a broadcasting medium or the media with me. I'm just getting it broadcasted. I just capture it and use it and show it on TV. So normally, kind of a channel broadcasting or something which is called as dish TV is a very, very good example of interfaces. Okay. So you can use interfaces for this reason. But then somebody has a reference of IX and IY. What if somebody has maths class ka reference or complete maths class availability? The person can call all the methods. But what if I want to deny this? What if I want to disallow this? That anybody who wish to call add, subtract, multiplication should refer it via interface reference only. Somebody should not be able to like use maths class and call add, subtract, multiplication. And then the next thing comes up. Instead of we going in this way, we have option available. This is public implementation of interface. We also have option available. Just imagine you go and create this public class like this. We have another option available. And imagine while we implement, we try to see implement interface and interface all members explicitly was another option. And this option gives you a fully qualified implementation of the interfaces. Look at this. There are two add methods now. One is ix.add and one is iy.add. And now you have an option available. Just imagine you may wanted ix add to do x plus y. Just imagine you may have an intention of implementing x plus y plus maybe 100 for no reason. So you wanted add implementation of ix to be x plus y. You wanted add implementation of iy to be x plus y plus 100, a different implementation. You wanted multiplication implementation to be I into y. And you just wanted subtract implementation to be something which is called as x minus y. Just imagine there are four implementations now. ix.add, iy.add. And keep it in mind, now if at all you go ahead and create something which is called as maths class object. Okay, equal to new maths. Just look at this, what you get. Object dot when you do not get any other method. You don't see a method called as add, multiplication, division, and so on and so. Now you cannot call any of the method because it's a what you call as explicit implementation or private implementation. Means what? You cannot call it with the maths object, but you can call it with something like ix, okay, obj equal to new maths. You can have something like this, and you can just say obj dot, and you can only see add and subtract like methods. Okay. And then if at all you see IY, you can only be able to see object dot, and you will only be able to see multiplication and addition right now, which means only with the reference of IX and IY, you will be able to call up those methods. With complete maths class availability, you will not be able to call those methods. This is explicit implementation of interfaces. Something like this is, it's not people will be able to do with the help of abstract classes, if at all you look at. And then very well said sometime back that, what Saurabh said, that abstract classes are typically when it comes to are specifically for partial implementation. I mean, to use or whenever we have something which is called as some incomplete and some complete methods, then the what you call it as abstract classes can be better. We cannot have multiple implementations like this in case of abstract classes. We can only have multi-level inheritance. So some people may come up with the fact that abstract classes or interface are for multiple inheritance. But keep it in mind, we don't see that way, because if at all you have an interfaces usage like this, inheritance means something is available in the base, then only we can inherit. There is nothing available in the base, so definitely what we are going to inherit at the end of the day. We are just going to implement the what you call as signatures at the end. So you will find out this approach which we saw, having an interface reference and waiting for a class object from server side, like I said it here. Such kind of implementations are a very what you call it as implementations to a larger extent is called as service oriented architecture. So interfaces are very important for service-oriented architecture, which is called as SOA in short. Okay. I hope I'm clear with this. Does this make any sense to all of you? Is this clear? Yes, everyone? Great. So hope this makes some sense. I'm just going to go and add in now and share again a whiteboard. Okay, so we were here and we were discussing this. So interface in abstract classes, those kind of a differences are definitely, going to be there. I'll export this again and clear the whiteboard one more time. I'll clear the page. Okay. The next thing that we'll come up with is when it comes to, like I said, interface abstract classes, that's one thing. The next thing which people are going to go and ask you is something which basically only .NET has, no Java or something like, no, other parallel technologies basically have this feature. Something like delegates and events, okay, as a concept. And this concept is something which basically kind of, people normally something like, ignore most of the time. I mean, developers are not, the freshers are not good in this particular topic. There can be a lot which can be done with respect to delegates and events. Okay. So people will come up with a very basic question, first of all, like, what does it mean by delegates? And you can affrontly convey delegates are typical function pointers. Okay. So you should start with delegates are function pointers. Okay, that's one thing that you can come up with, first of all. The next thing, when it comes to something like, events. So events are basically, you can just convey, it can be something like, some sort of code execution to be done when the user interaction happens or, you need an interrupt. Okay. So with events, okay, you can convey something like with events combined with delegates, I should say. Delegates compulsory. Huh? Events cannot be used alone. It has to be coupled with something like delegates. Okay, you cannot use events directly. You have to couple them with what you call as delegates. So with events combined with delegates compulsory, you can convey the code to be executed, okay, when certain condition or event, or I should say user action, or maybe more like an interrupt happens. Interrupt takes place. So what is it that happens is when it comes to something which is called as, events. So take an example, user clicks on a button, then we are supposed to go and maybe execute some piece of code. Take an example that, whenever user does the right click, we wish to execute some piece of code. Take an example, something like, user selects a country, and then we are supposed to go ahead and maybe maybe execute a code to do something which is called as um, some code execution. So you will eventually understand that, I guess the spelling is wrong here. This is going to be double R. Okay, that's correct. So what happens is, uh, you can define what the interrupt should be. It can be button click, it can be something like right click, it can be some sort of maybe combo box selection or combo box item selection, and you can convey the code to be executed. So when I say delegates are function pointers, those are the functions we are supposed to execute whenever some XYZ event occurs. Okay. So when it comes to delegates, uh, delegates can be used in isolation. Okay. Delegates can be used separately and in isolation. Okay. But events are dependent on something called as delegates. You cannot use events directly. You will have to understand this that, you cannot use events directly. You have to have delegates associated with them. There are a couple of syntaxes that people use. Plus equal to, okay, syntax is used for coupling of event and delegate. Okay, minus equal to, plus equal to, and minus equal to is the syntax. Okay, I should say syntax is used for decoupling of event and delegates. Okay. At any point of time, when you look at event and delegate code, you will see that coupling basically happens with the help of something like plus equal to, and decoupling basically happens with the help of minus equal to. Normally, this is in under UI programming, you will find out. Okay. In case of UI programming, okay, form-based programming, okay, events and delegates are used heavily. Now, obvious, something like, if at all you are appearing for an interview, you might be like, inquiring about what company you are going to go and appear for. So eventually what you will have is you will have a knowledge that what company basically works on. It can be something like companies may be working on desktop-based applications. Um, Companies may be working on something like, let's say, web-based applications. So you need to have a little bit of understanding, like what to expect in an interview. Okay. So let's say, take an example. If you're appearing for Jabil Circuit, if you're going to go and appear specifically for Siemens PLM, if you are going to go and appear specifically for companies like LBTS, so you will eventually notice that these companies do work on desktop-based applications or SUS, standard unit supply, for example. They do work on desktop-based applications. Such companies will definitely be looking for a knowledge about event and delegates. The companies which basically work on web APIs only may not actually come up with the questions on events and delegates, because that's not something which routinely people would follow out there. So expect event and delegate kind of a questions specifically from, like, where form-based programming basically happens, from a UI programming happens, and so on and so forth. Okay. Also, there are questions that, recently some people have actually come up with, like, can we use, okay, maybe delegates or dependency injection. Okay. This is something to do with typical inheritance only. So you can also have here, because using delegate, using events, and you can say using delegate, you can actually go and maybe point out to any of the methods. So just imagine, just like in C++, there is a concept called as function pointer. What happens is, using function pointer, you can actually point out to any method with a specific signature. So that way is, just imagine if there is a method which expects a function pointer, and that function pointer is going to one point to method A or method B. You can also use delegates for dependency injection. So can we use delegates for dependency injection? That's one of the questions that people have, been coming up with. Okay. And the answer is definitely yes. We can use it for dependency injection. And let me demonstrate that to you quickly. So let me export this. I'm just going to go and use only delegate in this case. I am not going to go and use events in this case. Like I said, delegates can be used in isolation separately, but events are dependent on delegates only. So I'm just going to go and have this exported, and let me showcase one quick demonstration of how delegates can be utilized for calling any method or having dependency injection. Okay. So take an example. I will go to sharing a screen. Let me go to screen. Let me go to this. And we'll just come up with maybe another example. I'll unload this, save this. I'll have another method now. Let's add a new project. Let's call it as console app again. Let's say 02. And then let's put up here demo, maybe DI, with something which is called as delegates, or demo DI. Let's add this. Here we go. Look at this now. When it comes to dependency injection, we have a couple of options available. Okay. Now, a few things first. So I'll have a very simple example in this case. Okay. Normally, we do have one series on the YouTube, my channel, which is about solid principles or OID problems. Okay, if at all you follow, that will give you some details. I'm just going to go and have one example out here, which is just for the sake of, imagine there's like, too many methods in this particular application or project. And then all those methods, and after the method, I wish to use something which is called as, I just wanted to log down certain things. I'm not going to go and have a singleton pattern utilized over here, but then I just try to have a quick, example out here. Something like, let's say there is, maybe just imagine, this is, just imagine method call one here, here. Okay, I'll copy and paste. One, two, three, four. So imagine there are four methods available or four methods called in here. Okay. And then after each of the method, I wish to have, let's say, a log maintained. Okay. Normally, what we can come up with is, take an example. Imagine this is going to be a file logger. Okay. So this class basically logs some message in something which is called as a text file. Just imagine this is the code that we have. It goes into some text file. Just imagine. And here is a method available, something like, let's say, void log. And I wish to simply go ahead and write down, okay, file logger log. Okay, this is the code that we have. So normally what happens is, if this is the main method and after every method out here, imagine if I keep on calling file logger, okay? So file logger, maybe why can't we just do something like this? I plan to, let's say, have these methods as well out here. Just imagine this is going to be public static void method number one. I'll have this method called here. Okay, method one, method two, method three, method four. Okay, so I have method one, method two, method three, and method four. So this is method two, method three, method four. And imagine there is an important code out here, and I wish to keep on calling some methods like this out here. M1 called, then M2 called, then M3 called, and then M4 called. Okay, just imagine these are the methods that we have. And I would like to, okay, read line. We go. Have a look now. So we have got M1, M2, M3, M4 called. And what I wish to do after M1, M2, M3, M4, I wish to keep on calling this logger. Okay, this file logger. I'm just going to go ahead and have this file logger object created somewhere out here. Since it's a static kind of a calls, I'm just going to go and have something like this. File logger object created equal to new file log. Okay. And I wish to call this object out here every other time. So imagine I just called up here dot log method. Okay. File logger log. This won't be available because I would need it as static. Okay, here we go. After each of the method, just imagine I'm calling this logger. Okay, just imagine. Now, when I run this piece of code, M1, M2, M3, M4 gets called. And then what you see on the console right now is this. Okay, method one called and then file logger called. Then method two called, then logger called. Method three, logger. Method four, logger, and so on and so forth. So what is it that happens now is this logger basically is explicitly called out here. Okay. Now this, if at all we look at this way, M1 basically becomes dependent on the object, which is of type file logger. M2 basically is hardcore dependent on object of type file logger. But what if M1, M2, M3, M4, they are going to want expect, that I don't want a file logger. Somebody who is using my program, somebody who's calling main method expects that, I really don't wish to use file logger. I wish to use a console logger. I wish to use a database logger and blah, blah. So in such cases, how do I ensure that? So just like we have this file logger, just imagine somebody comes up with a database logger. Just imagine DB logger. Then this class basically logs the message into a database. Just imagine this is what happens. Similar kind of a logic. And this is DB logger log. So somebody wants to use DB logger now. But then M1, M2, M3, M4, they are totally dependent on object log, and object is of type file logger. So how do I do this? Then we'll have to understand that this kind of a dependency is of no use. Okay. If at all we really want a logging to be independent, then we need to make M1 independent, M2 independent, M3 and M4 independent. And how do I do that? Option that we have is we'll have to pass on the logger. But then if I keep on passing only file logger, then it's the same case. If I expect a file logger here, it's the same file log, dependency of a file logger. Then what people can do is identify something common between these guys. And we can identify something common. This can be an interface. Let's say iLogger. And then what we can have is we can have this method, pushed in here. We can just say file logger implements iLogger. Okay. And this also, dblogger also implements iLogger. So file logger is a iLogger, dblogger is a iLogger. And then what is it that we expect now? M1 basically, instead of being dependent on file logger or being dependent on dblogger, we can just make it dependent on iLogger. And I can say logger. Okay. So we can just expect these parameters out here. Okay. I need iLogger. I need a logger. I need a logger. And then here, instead of we calling object.log, we'll call logger.log. So which logger are you interested in? Okay. Which logger are you interested in? That can be conveyed out here. So I may convey something which is called as file logger. So somebody is interested in file logger. Okay. Somebody may be interested in file logger again, like M2 method. Somebody may be interested in something which is called as, let's say, DB logger. Let the one who is going to call up this method take a decision. Somebody wanted a DB logger over here. Let's pass on. Somebody wanted over here something which is called as a DB logger. Let's pass on. Let the person who is going to call up this method take the call on the same. I have made it independent now. It is not totally dependent on file logger. Any logger you pass on is absolutely okay, because ultimately expectation is of type iLogger. Which logger you pass, it really doesn't matter, because both the loggers are actually going to come down from iLogger only. See, M1 file log, M2 file log, M3 DB log, M4 DB log. And now take an example. After all of these basic things, I actually tried to resolve the dependency with the help of interfaces. This is, one of the basic reason I would end up using, interfaces for. But then instead of using, interface out here, can I just, replace all of this code with respect to something that is called as delegates as well? Why to have a dependency like this? So I'm just going to go and copy paste this example again. Okay, I'll be copying this example now. So this entire public class program, I am going to go and copy and paste. Okay, the earlier example is above. And instead of we having dependency like this, why can't we do something like this now? Okay, signature of the method. This is log returning a void. This is log accepting nothing and returning a void. Why to even have a dependency on iLogger? Why to even have a dependency on file logger and DB logger? Why can't we resolve it like this? So we can do something like this. We can have public delegate declared, a delegate which basically points to a method which returns void. Let me call this as my delegate. And then I can expect nothing as an input, which means this delegate will point to a method accepting nothing and returning nothing, which is like a log method only. And then what I will do is I will just expect in these methods, this M1, M2, M3, M4 methods, I will just expect something which is called as, in M1, M2, M3, I'll expect something like this. I'll only expect my delegate pointer. So give me a pointer which basically points to a method. And I'll just call that pointer. Forget about log method call even. I will just call the pointer. That's it. Call the pointer. Call the pointer. Call the pointer. And call the pointer. Which pointer do you call? It really doesn't matter. What pointer is pointing to doesn't matter. Whatever pointer is pointing to, we will keep on calling it. Okay. So M1, M2, M3, M4 have no idea whether to call a logger.log or anything else. We are just calling a pointer in this case. M1 only has a knowledge about pointer, nothing else. Which method pointer is pointing to, that is unknown. And now what do I do? While I keep on calling this, I will simply declare over here my delegate pointer. Okay, my delegate pointer equal to, and let us say this delegate will ask you, give me a method which returns a void and accepts nothing. And now it's my choice. I can always go ahead and I can always and always convey, okay, db logger ka log method, which basically has the same signature. So it is up to me what logger to utilize. I can go ahead and say file logger, okay, file logger, logger1 equal to new logger, okay. I can go ahead and say db logger, okay, logger2 equal to new dblogger. And we have a choice now. To a pointer, I can always convey, okay, keep on pointing to logger1 log method. Okay. I can also convey pointer number 2. Okay. So pointer number 1 calling logger1 log. Pointer number 2 can keep on calling logger2 log. And M1 is dependent on pointer now. Let's pass on here pointer. Let's pass on here pointer 2 instead of logger. So pointer 2. Doesn't matter. Here I can just keep on passing pointer again. Is it compulsory I should have something which is called as, maybe log methods? Absolutely no. In case you wish, you can also plan to use a separate method altogether. Forget about these classes. Imagine if at all I come up with an extra method over here, okay, which is same signature, void my log, okay, and this is my, okay, maybe miscellaneous log. Okay. This method has the same signature. Why can't I just have another pointer created? Okay. Call it as a pointer number 3, and which points to a method which is called as my log method. Okay. It needs to be static because we are calling inside a main method. So public static my log. I'll just call my log. Okay. Have a look. And then here I can also convey pointer number 3. This is pointer number 3. So just imagine M1 is not dependent on, DB logger or any other logger. It is just dependent on a pointer. A pointer which points to a method returns nothing, accepts nothing is what is expected. So I have just resolved a dependency. Rather, I made M1, M2, M3, M4 independent. Which method you wish to call internally, M1, M2, M3, M4 need not be aware of it. You pass those method via pointer, later on. And now if at all you see, if we run this piece of code, you will immediately notice method 1, file logger called. Method 2, db logger gets called. Method 3, my file logger gets called. Method 4, miscellaneous logger gets called, and so on and so on. So you will eventually find out, just like we utilized some time back interface or abstract classes specifically for dependency injection, we just use delegate as well for dependency injection, because we can utilize these delegates, to point to any method, which means we are anyway, wherever delegates are being used, we are making that piece of code independent, because pointer is pointing to which method we have no idea. Let the person who is calling that method, let the person who is calling that class, decide that. And that's exactly where the important functionalities come up in picture. I'm sure that you will have idea, and you will be able to, better understand this once I share this code base with you, and then you will be able to something like, maybe handle the things. Okay. I mean, if at all you debug this code by yourself, then you will be able to understand it better. I hope this makes a little sense, everyone. If somebody is drawing, okay, on the screen. So, okay. So I hope this makes sense. Is it clear to some extent, guys? Does this make any sense? I'm sure at least those who basically are, yeah. Okay, great. Hope this makes sense. And then, this can give you a little bit of insight, like what exactly, I mean by delegates can be used for dependence injection. This is one of the very routine, maybe question that one can come up with. Okay, great. Okay, let me do one thing now. Let me save this code, jump to whiteboard one more time. Hopefully, okay, here we are. So now that we understand that delegates can also be used just like interface and abstract classes, specifically for dependency injection. So yeah, so there's a question that we have. Okay, we even have multicast and inbuilt delegates like action and func. When to use inbuilt delegates? Okay, so see, just like we defined our own delegate, you will find out that action and func delegate can also be utilized instead of defining your own delegates. Like Sushant, when you ask this, let me take you back to the code. Okay, so I'll go back to the screen here. What did I do? I declared a delegate, out here. I declare this delegate, right? Which basically points to this thing. A delegate points to a method accepting nothing and returning a void. So instead of I defining this delegate, I also have a couple of options. What I can also plan to do is I can also plan to use something like this. This is just my delegate. What if the method, instead of we declaring this delegate, Microsoft actually comes up with a delegate called as action delegate. So, if at all you look at this, just like I defined my delegate, there is already available thing which is called as action delegate. So, take an example. The same logic I can also be utilized, or I can also utilize it in this particular manner. Instead of this, I can also come up with action pointer. Okay. Action pointer, which is a built-in delegate. If at all you see a definition of action, you will notice this is a delegate declared under a system namespace by Microsoft, which basically can be used to point to a method returning nothing and accepting nothing. So we are free from declaring our own MyDelegate as well. So we don't even need this. We can also make it dependent in this particular manner. Like, we can have this delegate declared like this. And then instead of I making these methods, instead of I having these methods declared in this thing, I can always convey that, okay, I have a dependency on action pointer. That is also absolutely okay. So why to even go ahead and declare your own delegate in that case? So you don't need to do that. You can just start using action delegate. So all action delegates are eventually and the output is there. So we are free from declaring our own kind of delegate. This line is something we can always avoid, because there is an action delegate which can help us point to method accepting 0 to 17 different inputs or 16 different inputs but returns void, which means any method which returns void can be called up to and accept up to 16 parameters from 0, total 17. So you will find out from 0 to 16 parameters we can utilize action delegate from Microsoft, and if the method returns you something, then we can definitely use func as a delegate. So func is a delegate by Microsoft, just like action, which can be utilized to point to a method which returns something and accepts up to 16 parameters. Action is a delegate which can also be utilized to point to a method which returns void and accepts up to 16 parameters. Okay. Multicast and something like, normally, if at all you really want a series of methods to be called, like series of delegates to be called, one delegate calling other delegate, the other delegate calling other delegate pointed method. If at all we want to have sequencing to be achieved, if at all we really have something which is called as, the rule of chaining to be followed, just like jQuery, then definitely what people can come up with is multicast like delegates. Okay. I hope this gives a bit of insight. But func return or no, func is something which can be used for pointing to a method which returns, something. Let me do one thing. Let me take one more example here about func and this, which will help us understand the things. Let me close. Let me go to solution and create one more project. Here we go. Again, a console app, 03 demo, and let's say func action. Here we go. So take an example. I have a method here, which basically, let it be static method, doesn't matter. Public, static. Let's say this method returns void and print. Okay. And it expects string message. And over the console, I'm just going to go and call, I'm going to go and print message. Just print the message. Just that's the logic. There is another method that I have, public static. Let's say it returns an integer. It's an addition method. Expects int x, int y, and then we can just say return x plus y. Okay, that's the code that we have. So imagine both the methods we can directly call. I wish to indirectly call these methods, and hence what I'm going to go and use is now delegate. I'll just say console.readline towards the end so that it should not stop abruptly. Uh, there's another question. All differentiate basically based on type of predicate function. Yes, absolutely. Here we go. So take an example. If I wish to call a print method returning void and accepting string, option one I have is I can always go ahead and have my own delegate, right? So just take an example. If I declare my own delegate, how do I declare this? I would go ahead and say public um, static delegate, okay? Public delegate, which points to a method returning void, accepting something like string message, okay, as a parameter. This is my delegate declaration. And to use that delegate, I would have something like, pointer equal to new my delegate. And I wish to call this print. I can just convey print this case because print has the same signature as that of a delegate. It accepts string and returns void. It accepts string and returns void. And I can keep on calling pointer now and pass on ABCD as a message. This is one option. Okay, run this. Output is ABCD. Next thing that you have, why do I go ahead and declare a delegate like this? Right now, this delegate says I can point to a method which accepts string and returns void. Why can't I do something like this? Sometimes a method can take two parameters. So in such cases, instead of I going for this, quick question to all of you, what does this mean even? I am using a generic kind of a parameter now that any message of any type is also helpful, which means I have a delegate, which is a generic delegate now, which can point to a method returning void, accepts T, any type of message, which means now I literally can have any method like this returning void, accepting one parameter of any type for that matter, not only string, any type, but one parameter. And in such cases, what I can do is instead of I calling print like this, I have another option. I can always convey method, my delegate. T stands for string in this case. And I can always convey the delegate is of type string. That's it. We are done. And now, if at all you put a round bracket here, look at this, what is expected. It says T is of string type, which means I need a method which returns void and access string. That's it. We are done. Again, if we run this, now we can see ABCD getting printed. We just defined a generic delegate which can accept any parameter, which can point to a method accepting any parameter. Now the question comes up is, what if there are two parameters? Then I would end up creating some sort of overload like this. I can have copy paste. I can say P and Q, for example, P, comma, Q. And I can say, okay, P type some parameter. Let's say parameter one. And I can say Q type parameter two, which means I can have another delegate declared, which can accept up to two parameters and returns void. But likewise, I can keep on creating number of delegates like this, accepting one parameter, accepting two parameter, accepting maybe 10 parameters and so on and so, returning void. Then the question comes up, why do I do this? I don't need it. Reason is very simple. Somebody has already done this for you. So what we can do is we can use action, okay, equal to new action. Look at the parameter expected, nothing. But what will happen if at all I put here something like this? Normal action will expect you to pass on nothing and method returning nothing. But if at all you go with action, we have 16 parameters. Have a look at this. We can pass on, these many parameters, which means action can help us point to a method accepting 16 type of parameters. Returns void. The method should return void, which means right now my method is accepting only string input. So I can just say string input. Okay, in this case, returning nothing. So I can just say new, okay, string, and then returning void. So the method I need is print now. Again, one more time. So I can just say print. That's it. And I can just keep on calling this pointer. So I don't have to go and define maybe my delegates like 100 delegates or something. There are methods which basically up to 16 parameters are expected. I can always use action delegate in this case. So I am free from declaring my multiple number of delegates in this case. See, the output is this. But while action can be only utilized to basically return something, I mean, point to method which returns void. What if method returns something like add method? Then we have an option available. What we can do is instead of using action, I can go ahead and I can use another delegate called as func. And what func expects now? Output. A method which returns something but accepts nothing. Have a look. A method which accepts one input and one output. Method which expects two kind of type of input and output is one. And that way, if you look at, there are 16 inputs and one output, which means again 17 overloads. So right now, my job is something which returns integer, accepts integer, and again accepts integer. Okay, I can say pointer equal to new pointer. And I wish to call something which is called as add method now. Okay, so I wish to call add method, which because it expects two integers and one output integer. And I can just say call a pointer, pass 10, 20, and whatsoever output comes up, let us put it on the console. Run this and observe. You have 30 as an output. Means you can use this delegate func to basically push a call to a method which accepts multiple number of parameters and always return something. So to a method returning something, use func. To a method returning void, use action. I hope this makes sense. The question which was asked. Yeah. Great. So normally what we have instead of we going into this area, which is like, delegate with multiple number of generic parameters, we do have options available. And what we can do is we can go ahead and avoid creating our own multiple number of generic delegates. And we can keep on using something which is called as, maybe action and func delegates instead of defining our own generic delegates every other time. This makes more sense. Huh. Microsoft methods, when Microsoft defined their own methods, many number of methods you will find out accepting inputs like func and action. That's one reason basically made action and func popular. But otherwise, we would have simply created our own delegates like this earlier as well. Only thing, instead of we doing it, they are doing it, and we can utilize it, right? So now going back to the whiteboard again, I'll continue and jump to the whiteboard one more time. So this is one of the thing we just used something which is called as, we use interfaces for dependency injection. Now, when it comes to MVC related questions, you will eventually find out under MVC related questions, you can also expect something which is called as not exactly a life cycle, but under MVC, dependency injection is being used. And then, you need to understand at least a basic default template of MVC. Okay, so if you're appearing for interviews on MVC, then you are supposed to understand at least some basic things about the parts of what you can say parts of MVC life cycle. So here we go. So under MVC, maybe interview, MVC core or APIs. What is to understand over here? Okay, how dependency injection works. Injection works over here in MVC core. Okay, how global objects are initialized. Okay. Then the next thing comes up is, yeah, we don't mostly use delegates in case of Sushant. When it comes to something like, maybe calling some sort of link you like code, for example, func delegates like where as a method, select as a method. Those methods will basically expect action and func like delegates, based on the need. We don't keep on creating delegates very frequently nowadays. We keep on using the delegates like action and func based on the need, right? So we don't use we don't define the projects. We don't define the delegates nowadays because it's already action and func delegates suffices the need. But we use it. Yes, we use it unknowingly. We use it whenever link to queries we write. We use where and select like methods. There we definitely keep on using it. Okay, so global objects are initialized. How global objects are initialized? And can we control and make the code, make the effective, I would say, usage of something which is called as make effective usage of something like objects, memory in MVC. Yeah. So guidelines, which means people may ask you guidelines. So guidelines. Okay. Now, when it comes to this, in case of MVC APIs, let us plan to understand what basically one can expect in case of MVC core or so. Let us plan to understand this first. Okay, let me export this PNG. Go back to the whiteboard again screen. I'll go back to screen now. Here we are. I'm just going to go and unload this project, which we created some time back. Okay. And let me add one more project, which basically, okay, add one more project. This is going to be MVC core project. Okay. So I'll just pick up ASP.NET MVC core web app MVC. There's going to be 04 demo MVC core. I don't wish to use HTTPS, but doesn't matter. Here we go. So what you see is there is a controller, there is a model, and there is a view. Okay. Take an example. Okay. We are just interested in. So by default, the project starts with controller. Controller has a method. Method basically returns some sort of UI. A very basic controller I'm going to go and create. Let's say empty controller. Name it as a home controller. Home controller inherits from controller compulsory. Returns iAction result. So somebody shoots a call to home/index. A UI will be expected. So UI will be typically out here. So we can just say add a folder name home, same name as that of controller will be searched. And then there will be a file searched called as home index.csstm. So this is the file that we have. And I wish to only add HTML here. Head, okay, title, demo. I have body and then H1 and then welcome to MVC, nothing else. Okay. So whenever somebody shoots a call to home/index, we will be getting this index UI. Okay. Let's see when we run this piece of code, we will get to use some sort of either development server or Kestrel server. Some port number will be reserved. And what you see on the screen is welcome to MVC getting printed. By default, we have called home/index. Now take an example. Index method expects some sort of objects. Okay, just imagine index expects some sort of object. What sort of object it may expect? Take an example. I'm just going to go to main method as of now, or okay, main method. So program starts with a program.cs file. Look at this. Here we have a lot many number of things available. Okay, a lot many number of things. These methods, basically, these methods, do they make any sense? So take an example. When I said something like, we are expecting some sort of control over the object creations and dependency injection. So take an example. What I have here is a public interface. Let's say I drink. That's a very common interface I keep on using. Okay. Avoid drink. This is the method. Okay. There is something which is implementation that we will expect later. This is going to be one class. Let's say hot drink. Okay. I drink. And then we can just have an implementation like this method can get called. Okay, it can be something like normally we can just have the method expected, something like, there can be code written. I won't be using console over here because it's an MVC application. So I'm just going to go and put here something like, okay, maybe let's say this is tea or coffee. Okay. So just imagine this is one hot drink class and there's another implementation called as cold drink. Okay, just see. And this is going to be something which is called as, let's say, maybe Coke or Pepsi. Okay, soft drink. Have a look now. There's a different implementation altogether in a hot drink and in a cold drink. Okay, I drink is the interface. So what you can typically do is just imagine out here, I am going to one expect whenever home controller class object gets created. See, the controller class object is created automatically. If I go to constructor and just imagine, I would expect I drink. Okay, I drink some drink, some drink object. Okay, which means just imagine a scene. If somebody wishes to use Okay, if somebody wishes to use home controller class object, somebody must pass an object of item. See, I called it in a constructor. It's a constructor level dependency injection. Okay, level DI. So you cannot create a home controller class object unless until, let's say, I have a dependency passed like I drink in this case. I'm not making it nullable. So what is it that happens now? I am expecting some object as a parameter. The very first thing, I myself am not creating a home controller class object. That gets created automatically by somebody called as controller factory. So whenever somebody shoots a call like home/index, this URL will be something like chopped. Two parts are taken, home and index. Home is appended with the word called as home controller. And then home controller class is searched in the entire project namespace and a home controller class object is created. But when the object gets created, what is expected is some sort of reference, some sort of object of a class which implements iDrink. And how do I get this iDrink class object? So in such cases, what is expected is you can always go ahead and you can always use something called as services. So you can resolve the dependency, injection with the help of something like this. You can always convey to MVC higher classes like services dot add, and you can always convey something which is called as add, maybe something which is called as add. Hold on. Add scoped. Okay. And under add scoped, you can always convey the type of service, which means what type of expectation we have and what type of object we wish to pass on. So I can always convey a type of expectation is I drink. And whenever somebody expects I drink type of implementation, I wish to provide type of something which is called as cold drink. Okay. So which means I myself am not going to go and create a cold drink class object. This object will be created automatically and it will be passed on whenever somebody expects I drink. So if at all I have put a breakpoint over here, and if I run this piece of code now, just observe what happens. Have a look now. If you look at this and carry a cursor here, just observe what is expected now. What kind of object do you get here? You can see the object of cold drink is being passed over here. Look at my cursor. So you will eventually find out where I drink is expected. What we are basically getting out here is cold drink because cold drink is I drink. Okay. What if somebody expects something like hot drink? In such cases, I would have replaced this with hot drink. But then what if somebody puts something like, both hot drink? Okay. Somebody has put up both. Now what will happen? When you run this piece of code, just observe out here. Now just observe what you end up getting is hot drink over here. Why is that? Because what did you do over here? The second time what you mentioned is object of type hot drink, which means initially you said whenever I drink is expected, pass on cold drink. Then you said when I drink is expected, pass on hot drink. What if I want both of them? Then you also have option. What you can do is you can have, if your expectation is both the objects, in that case, you can always expect something which is called as I drink collection. Okay. And some drinks is what you can expect. Now you run this piece of code. Okay. Now you run this again. Okay. So I guess it is I enumerable we should expect. So I enumerable, a collection interface of type I drink, and we can just say some drinks. Now you run this again and observe. So you are not creating an object of hot drink and cold drink. Those objects will be created by the MVC life cycle automatically using reflection. And now just observe what are the objects that you can get over here. You get both the objects now. You get cold drink object as well as you get hot drink object. You have a choice now what to basically pass on further. So the overall option is dependency injection at a constructor level, dependency injection at a method level can be handled automatically by MVC lifecycle. You are just supposed to keep on passing, the what you call it as DI details via add scoped, add session, add singleton. These are the methods available based on which it is decided which how many objects we are supposed to create. Here right now, based on the scope, based on the what you call as current call, one new object will be created. Had it been session, add session, so you would have seen something like, for per user, one object of cold drink and hot drink will be created. If you go for singleton, for all users, one single object of cold drink and hot drink will be created. So that is something one will have to have an idea. This is exactly where dependency injection fits into the MVC core lifecycle. Next thing is when it comes to something like, you added over here builder services dot add controllers with views. See, to initialize the controller, what did I say? Based on the UI, based on the call that you may have given, home index, the URL is split, home controller class is searched, object is created, and then that method gets called via reflection called as index method. You know that. The thing is, creating a home controller class object, whose job is this? The job basically belongs to somebody called as controller factory. The job belongs to controller factory, if you see. Then the next thing comes up is whose responsibility is this to basically find out a view? Somebody's responsibility to basically find out a view under this views and home and in folder. That is basically somebody called as view engine. Means we are talking about this single line, okay, that we have added. This single line, highlighted one. This single line alone is responsible for creating two more objects. One is called as controller factory and one is called as view engine. But what if a view engine is for rendering a view and returning a HTML UI? The only point is, my question is, if you're using web API, do you really return UI from the server side then? If it's a web API, you wish to return only JSON, not a UI. And in such cases, can we just avoid creating something which is called as view engine? So look at this, you also have an option. Instead of you creating this, if you are using something which is called as only APIs, it is suggested that you go ahead and use add controllers, okay, instead of using add controllers with views. Because add controller with views will initialize view related objects as well. We are not interested in that. If you're interested only in APIs, please use add controllers and we will have limited amount of objects created in the memory. And that's one reason what you're supposed to do is you have to understand lifecycle very well. Because minimizing the object creation in the lifecycle will definitely help you minimize the memory usage as well. And then if you really do good in case of, let's say, .NET interview, then you will eventually find out people will always come up with, further questions if you're doing well. I'll just go back to the whiteboard again. So how dependency, injection works? Can we control the effective usage of memory? So yes, guidelines, please observe your life cycle and please observe which objects are absolutely needed and which objects are not needed. You can always avoid extra object creations when it's not needed. And then the next thing which comes up is something which is called as understanding in the what you call as MVC application, something like what in general .NET application, how you can effectively use memory. Okay, so try to identify memory guidelines, okay, slash CPU guidelines, okay, okay, under MVC, in MVC, okay, um, plan to identify, okay, objects, object creation, which can be avoided. Okay, this is one part. Second thing, okay, plan to use something which is called as parallel programming, which is using all CPUs, effectively. Plan to use parallel programming, okay, or tasks. Task is a class which is kind of lighter than the thread. So plan to understand that. Okay. Use garbage collection guidelines strictly. Okay. Rules strictly. These are kind of, simple answers. Something like, use link you. Okay. As much as possible. Okay. These are very few guidelines. If at all one religiously follows, then eventually you'll find out, we'll be able to do good in case of maybe interviews. The only thing is like, unless until you dig in and hit the topic and try to do it by yourself, like demonstrations, understanding, some sort of hands-on, it becomes very difficult to justify the answer. Blindly telling like garbage collection rules one should follow strictly won't help unless until you really understand the garbage collection algorithm. Blindly telling use parallel programming won't help unless until you yourself are convinced that something like parallel programming really helps. Again, link you. There's much more to learn in case of link you. So what I'm going to go and do now, I'm just going to go and pause over here itself specifically for today. And then let us plan maybe another one specifically from the perspective of entity framework, link you, then maybe let's say parallel programming. We can plan one more session, sometime in the like next Saturday or something. Okay. I hope whatsoever we have discussed, it was fruitful and you are enjoying these sessions. Yes, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we'll pause then. Yeah. Thank you. I'll share the recording with all of you along with the demonstrations on the WhatsApp group. Okay. Thank you, everyone. All the best.